please.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you all taking time on a Sunday morning to join us on this 7sugar digital webinar series. We plan to have more of these in the coming weeks. We have a eminent panel here: Dr. Om Lakhani, Dr. Shaktivel, Dr. Mohan Chennai, Dr. Abhijit Bograj, plus the rest of you. Dr. Karthik, I think, if he's joining, he will probably join. And so I look forward to a very, very engaging conversation, how to manage diabetes, going forward, using digital platforms. So Dr. Abhijit, will you want to take over from here?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Adi. So the whole idea and concept of what we are trying to bring to the to this esteemed group that has joined today is to basically introduce what we have built. I'll be going into further details about the platform, but our main concept is to show how we can differentiate what we are doing with regard to other health platforms that are there, and why it is important that we need to look at data as well as look at treating our patients with this kind of a digital medium, and how we are able to reduce the pain points that we have experienced in the past. So with all this put together, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Om Lakhani. I've actually met Om more virtually than in physical meetings, and so we have had the opportunity to meet more often thanks to all these webinars that we are having. So virtually, I've seen him more. My first introduction to Om was when I read an article what Om had written in 2015. So what amazed me was the kind of correlation this gentleman has done with regard to hypothyroid. He has linked hypothyroid with Kumbhakarna, and he also analyzed other aspects of what this person could be having, and could be having an eating disorder. So from a very endocrine aspect, to look at it on that level absolutely blew my mind. We also have our panelists. Dr. Shaktivel, Dr. Mohan Chennai, who's coming in from all parts of India. We are waiting for Dr. Karthik to also join us. So all of them have, kind of have very unique aspects to what they bring to endocrinology, and that is where I definitely like to make a point here that this is what we need to do. The need of the hour is to be unique, and so with that note, I'd like to hand over the session to Om to start off proceedings.
Thank you, Abhijit. Actually, I'm reminded of that Kumbhakarna article. We have written 2 sequels to that. One of them did not get published. The other one, I'm hoping will get published, soon. But these days, IJM does not want to, take up this sort of out-of-box ideas. I'm not very sure. Okay. Adi, can I be allowed to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Showing host disable attendee screen sharing.
Oh.
यार टाइम क्या हो गया? 11:30 हो गए. पता 11 बजे शुरू करना है मैंने.
Try now, sir. Doctor,
yeah. Now you can see this.
Okay. Mute the other attendees also, Adi.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, good morning, everyone. I can see a lot of friends in the amongst the attendees, and I think this is like a let's call it a closed circle of friends rather than any kind of a formal meeting. Let's try to keep it informal. And the idea here is that this is a first introduction to the 7sugar platform. And I've been using the platform for a few weeks now, the current version of it. And it's, when Abhijit approached me almost a year or two back about, this idea which he had about developing a platform which can enhance our endocrinology practice, especially diabetes practice. I was really intrigued by his ideas, and now I'm really seeing the vision which he had for such a long time into practice. And I think this platform is really, I think it really changes our practice, and I think in that sense it's really useful. So what I'm going to do is, we have actually flipped the session in a way. uh, we are going to start with an introduction of what I have experienced as a customer to this platform, and then we'll go back to Abhijit to introduce to you the some of the key aspects of the platform which can be very useful in your own clinical practice. So we'll start. It generally you have the introduction to the platform first, but we are flipping it around. We are trying to introduce the user side of it first, and then from the developer side of it as we go along. So I'm going to show you how I use this platform. For the same app can be used by different people in a different way. For example, let's say Facebook, or let's say WhatsApp. WhatsApp, some people use WhatsApp for business, for example. To advertise your products, to sell your products. You could be using WhatsApp. Some people use it for communication with their loved ones, having family groups of WhatsApp. Some people use it for their intra-company communication, like for our own hospital WhatsApp group. A lot of the information gets shared there. The meetings, any patient data, so on and so forth. While some of them use it just for mere, enjoyment, looking at the forwards on the WhatsApp groups. The same app, which is available to people across the platform, across the ages, across the spectrum, is used by different people in different way. In the same way, what's unique about 7sugar is that you have one platform. The same platform can be potentially used by different endocrinologists and different people in a different way. So what I'm going to show you is how I have understood this app, I have understood this platform, and how I use it in my own clinical practice. In your clinical practice, you might find features which might be more useful to you and which might be more applicable to you, but this is a more personal kind of an approach to the use of the app. Okay, so the first rule of entrepreneurship, and Dr. Shakti will back me up in this. Entrepreneurship 101 is basically, you should try to solve a problem which your target client is facing. Okay, so it could be, if in future, anybody, if you really wants to start a business or wants to start a product or develop a system, the idea is to find a problem first and then try to solve the problem. For example, let's say talk about Uber. So people had a problem in transport in their own cities. You had these taxis which are pretty expensive. You had other means of public transport which were probably not as efficient as a lot of crowding in there. So and on the other hand, you had a lot of car owners who did not know what to do with their car when it was not being used for their own personal use. So Uber, what they did was they solved the problem. They solved the problem for the car owners. They solve the problem for the drivers. They solve the problem for the end users. And by solving the problem, whenever you solve a problem, that sort of works perfectly for entrepreneurship. So you have, uh, uh, the problem solving aspect of any entrepreneurship is something which works in most aspects. So how does 7sugar solve problems? And 7sugar basically, and what I'm going to discuss in my talk, is there are three aspects, three problems which 7sugar has solved for me. Again, I'm saying this is a personal issues which they've helped me with. And I think, in your own personal use may be a little different. So for example, there are three things, and I'll discuss each of these in detail. First is it acts as an enhancement to the LibrePro or ambulatory glucose profile. Second, it helps to fine tune the management of type 1 diabetes on a basal bolus insulin. And this is something I talked to Abhijit a lot when they were in the process of development of the app. I thought this app is a great tool for type 1 diabetes patients because it really helps them in a micro way, which something a similar platform, only this platform can really do. And third is it reduced my dependence on WhatsApp communication. We started a talk with WhatsApp. There are issues with WhatsApp, and I'll just discuss that in a few minutes. And what this app does for me is that it helps reduce my dependence on WhatsApp and rather shifts that same conversation with my patient to the platform itself. So let's solve the first problem, that is using an enhanced CGM system, enhanced CGM device. So typically my type 2 diabetes management workflow is something like this. So when a new patient comes to me, you do the basic evaluation, the assessment of the patient. The treatment basically would be on oral antidiabetics with insulin or insulin plus OAD. So either OAD alone or insulin plus OAD would be a typical management style which I generally employ for my type 2 diabetes patients. Then after that, I ask my patients to regularly send their SMBG reports. Now, let's say I'm starting the patient on basal insulin. I often ask them to send me the fasting blood sugar daily using WhatsApp. That's the second step. The third step is, now once my fasting is fixed, right? So for example, let's say a patient comes to me with HbA1c of 11, his fasting blood sugar is 240. I start the patient on basal insulin. I titrate the dose of basal insulin till the patient's fasting sugar comes in the range of 90 to 140. That's the range typically I target. So this is my second step to the process. So I try to achieve the fasting sugar in a sort of a target range. Once the patient achieves the fasting sugar, after that I call the patient back, and that is when I place a continuous glucose monitor. So my use of CGM is basically to fine tune the diabetes management in the patient, right? So that is my third step. And then after that, I call the patient back, I take the CGM data, I look at the CGM data in detail, and I try to look at the other points of time during the day when the sugars may be on the higher side or probably on the lower side. So it could be a mid-afternoon a spike in sugar, could be an evening hypoglycemia, something like that. So look at these issues, then I fine tune my management based on that. So maybe an oral antidiabetic needs to be shifted somewhere. The patient needs to be told specifically to avoid khakra in the evening, which they, Gujaratis have with their snacks, a very common problem. Exercise which they're doing, which leads to hypoglycemia later in the day, and so on and so forth. So, I try to fine tune the diabetes management using the CGM. And finally, then I call the patient back for a follow-up with a follow-up HbA1c. So this is the typical workflow that I do in most of my diabetic patients who come for management. So basically what I do is I use a continuous glucose monitor as a tool for fine-tuning the diabetes management. I want to sort of, look at the finer points of how the patient is behaving, how the sugars are behaving throughout the day. And this is exactly where an app like 7sugar really helps me in the process, and I'll show you how. So typically, when I use an AGP at this point of time without using 7sugar, what I get is I get the basic data from LibrePro, but I don't get the patient end of the spectrum. I get the diabetes end of it. So I know that a particular drug is working in a particular way, a particular insulin is working in a particular way, but I don't know the variables from the patient's side. How is the patient? Is the patient missing out his medicines? Is the patient exercising vigorously in the evening time? Is the patient taking a high carbohydrate snack in the evening? I don't know all this, right? I'm actually blind in that sense, So I'm just looking at the sugar data, which is a single dimensional spectrum. Secondly, if the glycemic control is poor at one particular point of time in the day, I don't really know why it is so. And often by, even asking the patient, I'm not able to, the patient does not remember what he ate 7 days back, does not probably know, what really went on in that day. So my questions for this patient would be that, is it diet which is causing your sugars to be high? Is it compliance issue? Is the patient missing out his or her medication? Or is it something to do with the overall physical activity of the patient, right? So these are the questions which I have in my mind. So when I look at the CGM data, I don't get all the answers to all these questions, right? Because the patient's, memory also often doesn't serve them right. They'd say, yeah, I probably went for a dinner on Saturday night, or was it Sunday night? Or was it a wedding that I attended? Was it a sweet I had, which my auntie brought me? So you have often these issues which come up, and we are often trying to fish for a solution to that. So this is what often leads. For example, I'll give you an example here. So this is a patient who has high interday glycemic variability, right? So you look at the patient's average sugar. The average sugar is 147. So average sugar is not that bad. But the problem here is that the patient has interday glycemic variability. So you can see that the sugar in the, you see the thickness of the AGP curve. The thickness is pretty large. So for some days, the patient sugar is pretty good, but some days the patient sugar is pretty low. So if you take a case in point, the 6 a.m. sugar, there are points of time where the sugar is going as low as 70, and there are points of time when it's going as high as 180. You can see the massive amount of interday variability in this patient. And I see this AGP data, but I don't know why this problem is there, right? Again, look at the mid-afternoon values. At about 12 in the afternoon, you have the sugars going as high as 250, whereas it is going as low as 100 on some days. And I am really not sure what the problem is. So for this patient, let's say I do an HbA1c, the patient HbA1c will come to close to 7. So, for me, I would think that my problem is solved, but the patient would continue to have poor, glycemic control, a lot of glycemic variability, and will end up with diabetes-related complications. So I have done my job to an extent, but it's not a complete work which I've done. Secondly, again, look at this patient who is having a lot of intraday variability, right? Within the same day, there is a lot of variation. Again, the patient's average sugar is 166, so it's not that bad in terms of an HbA1c which you get. But look at the times, the patient is having very high sugars in the post-breakfast at time. The post-lunch is pretty good, but the post-dinner, again, the sugars are very high. So I want to really look at the patient's diet, the patient's lifestyle, patient's compliance with medication, patient's timing of insulin. All these things I really need to look at to see where the problem is there, right? So of course, AGP is a very useful tool, but it is incomplete. It tells you the problem, but it does not tell you why the problem exists. And that is where 7sugar really comes into picture. So what 7sugar does for me is that it gives me an enhanced CGM experience. So this is what I would like to, and this is the word I would like to focus again and again. It gives me an enhanced CGM experience. So already I am performing a continuous glucose monitoring, but I'm getting something more out of it. I'm getting some more details out of it, an enhanced CGM experience. That is what I'm getting. What medicines are missed during the day? Is the patient skipping one or more of the medications during the daytime? What is the impact of the specific diet on the glycemic control? So is that evening snack which the patient is eating a problem? Is that morning breakfast a problem? Is that dinner, heavy dinner, which is a problem? Is it that once in a while the patient likes to have a chocolate, a bar of chocolate, which is a problem? Is it that once in a while the patient is having a Coca-Cola, which is a problem? All these things, I can get as a data from 7sugar, which I do not get from my routine CGM experience. So for example, looking at this patient, so the patient uploaded the sugar, the data, and how this data upload process, how does this happen? All these things will be, Abhijit will show you in a little bit more detail. But the idea is basically that when you put the continuous glucose monitor, you onboard the patient for using the app, and then all the patient has to do is that patient has to click the photograph of what he or she is going to eat. It's as simple as that. Anybody can do it. It doesn't require any special skill. It doesn't require any specific, complicated process. All the patient has to do is to click the photograph of what he or she is going to eat. It's as simple, and anybody can do it. I have 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds who are doing this. Type 1 patients who are doing this without any major hurdle. So all they have to do that. And at the back end, and this is the magical part, at the back end, the dietitians who work for 7sugar, they calculate the calorie, they calculate the carbs, they calculate the other things. And when I get my CGM report, and I'll show you that, everything is integrated into the data, everything is integrated into the report to show me exactly where the problem was and exactly how I can help to solve it. So this patient, for example, on 11th on 11th of August in the morning time has a 47-gram carbohydrate breakfast, and how is the breakup? The patient had 355 calories, of which 47 grams were carbs, 12 grams of proteins, and so on and so forth. So each data point, what is the food that the patient is having and how much carbohydrate the patient is having. Again, in terms of physical activity, the data gives me what kind of physical activity they did. Again, this is very simple to do. If you're using an Android app, you can allow the app to take data from your Google Fit. And if you're using a iOS device, you can allow the Apple data to be shared the Apple Health data to be shared with the, with the app. So it's as simple as allowing the data to be shared. So all the patient has to do is to carry their mobile phone around whenever they're going for an exercise. That all the patient needs to do, and all the data is then integrated backend into the software, into the report, and you have everything again at one place. So that's the beauty of it. So you have the CGM data, you have the patient's compliance data, you have the patient's physical activity data, and you have the diet, everything put into a single frame where you can then look at it in detail and try to assess the patient's problem, right? Again, this slide here shows you the integrated form in which how the things are happening, the exercise of the patient, the activity, and the corresponding sugar values of the patient also you can get. This is again a sort of a overview of the entire thing. You can see the diet things which are given in yellow, and you can see the exercise points which the patient is doing in blue, and you can see the glycemic control of the patient overall. And this is what the report generates for me. And here is where one more, sort of nuanced thing you get for CGM, especially those who are interested in doing research. Your current LibrePro, the report which you get from LibrePro, it does not tell you the variability statistics. It does not tell you the standard deviation. It does not tell you the coefficient of variation. And here you can see on the right side, the data which is taken from the CGM, from the same CGM device which you're using by this 7sugar app, gives you the variability statistics also. It gives you the standard deviation, and it gives you coefficient of variation. And coefficient of variation is given in percentage. And just for those people who are not familiar with the use of CGM, coefficient of variation less than 33% is considered to be good, considered to have low glycemic variability. And if you talk about standard deviation, that is mean value of the sugar divided by 3. If it is less than the standard, if that's more than the standard deviation, or standard deviation is less than the mean sugar divided by 3, it is generally considered to be low glycemic variability. Also, it tells you the time in range, and you can see here the target of 70 to 180, that is the time in range. The patient has the time in range of about 85%, and it also tells you the breakdown of hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia statistics. It tells you the average glucose, and it also tells you the GMI, that is glucose management index, or an estimated HbA1c which you can expect in this patient. Again, in the same chart, you can get overall meal of the patient, how much carb he's taking per meal, what is the average calorie intake, the sleep data of the patient, the overall, in one view, you have the patient's body mass index, the height, weight, etc., the overall activity of the patient, and so on and so forth, right? So you get everything. Again, this integrates the data along with the exercise statistics. You can see here the number of steps he has taken. And what is the beautiful part is this one over here. It tells you exactly, and the patient can also read this themselves. This, you can give this printout to the patient, or it will appear in the patient's dashboard. Let's say that it tells you the average sugar between 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. was 99. The highest sugar was 163. There were 15% of the readings which are out of range. So on and so forth. This patient, unfortunately, this is a real patient. He's not uploading all his diet data very frequently, hence you have some of these gaps over here. But if this patient was uploading all the food data, you'd see how much calorie the patient is consuming at that point of time. It will also tell you how much steps the patient is having, how physically active the patient is. So all this you get as an integrated form at a single point of time during the day. So what it basically does for me is, the first problem it solves for me for a typical type 2 diabetes patient where I'm using CGM to fine tune my data, is that it exactly tells me A, the CGM data per se, with some enhanced features like a coefficient of variation and standard deviation. B, it tells me the dietary pattern of the patient, what carbs he took, what food he took, at what periods of time during the day. Third, it tells me the physical activity of the patient. And fourth, it tells me about the compliance of the patient. What medications were missed, what insulin doses were not taken at the right time, what drugs that the patient is missing or taking at the wrong time. All this data you can get, and then hence you can make a more informed decision and discuss your data more intelligently with the patient. You can solve the problems for the patient in a better way. So that's the first problem. The second problem it solves for me, and it is extremely useful in patients with type 1 diabetes. And all of you, there are a lot of, very, very renowned endocrinologists who are participants over here. We all, one of the biggest diseases, challenges that we face as endocrinologists is managing a patient with type 1 diabetes. It seemingly looks very simple that you basically have to give insulin to the patient, but in reality, it is a little bit more complicated than that. Again, to correlate with something interesting, how many of you really watched this Amazon Prime series called Breathe, which is starring Abhishek Bachchan? It's a great series. Again, I will not give out too many spoilers, but in that, and again, it's not a spoiler because this is shown in the very first episode. The protagonist that is Abhishek Bachchan, his daughter suffers from type 1 diabetes, and the daughter is kidnapped. Okay, so this type 1 diabetes is kidnapped, and wherever she is, she's been given insulin. So the first thing which the father has concern is that, and father and mother, the parents have a concern, is that my daughter is having type 1, who is going to give her insulin? We had times where we missed the insulin shot, and then she went into diabetic ketoacidosis, and now she is in the hands of a kidnapper who is not medically trained. How is he going to give insulin? And my things, were that how are they going to do carb counting? How are they going to adjust the dose of insulin? How are they going to treat hypoglycemia? These are issues. So, managing type 1 diabetes is extremely complex process. We all know that, there are days which you have good days and you have bad days. And this is where 7sugar app really helps in some way. So currently, as a case in point, I have a patient who is having type 1 diabetes. And what I do is I typically give them a 15-day cycle where the patient, typically tells me his lifestyle practically using the 7sugar platform. So what we do is we take the dietary data of the patient, every food, every meal that the patient takes, he or she uploads the data. How much carbohydrates the child is taking and what dose of insulin you're giving. And then you correlate that with the SMBG or the CGM data, and you exactly know how to adjust the dose of insulin. You'll get a better estimate of the insulin to carb ratio for that patient. So for example, and this really helped my practice, so I could actually calculate the exact insulin to carb ratio for that patient using the 7sugar platform, which I think is fascinating because, now you have this data, which is there available. So yeah, sorry, I think there's some slide missing over here. So, okay. So for example, basically, my type 1 patient, you started the patient on basal bolus insulin. So let's say the patient is taking X units of Lantus at bedtime and is taking, different shots of short-acting insulin, maybe Fiasp or Novorapid, something before meals. And, I look at the SMPG data. I look at how many grams of carbohydrate it took. So pre-dinner, what was the patient's sugar? How many grams of carbohydrates the patient took, and what was the post-dinner sugar? You have all this data available. And then you can correlate the data to calculate your insulin to carb ratio or adjust the insulin to carb ratio which the patient took. And then you can teach your patient how he or she or the parents on how they can adjust the dose of insulin on their own terms. I think Abhijit will talk more about SMBG. So, I think that is where, I'll allow him to discuss that in more details. The third problem, which, this app really solves for me, and it's a personal issue. Like all of you, I'm sure we don't like to be disturbed too much in our personal time, right? We don't want patients calling up every few hours, asking about what to eat, what not to eat, and so on. So initially, this problem is solved by the fact that, using WhatsApp. So you ask your patient that if you have issues, send a WhatsApp, don't give a call, right? And I think this is the same practice which most of the endocrinologists across the country have. Remember, I think, surgeons don't understand this. They said, why don't you give your number, right? Now, a surgeon has, maybe 5 patients he actively is dealing with in a day. I'm seeing 30 patients, 20 patients, 30 patients. Now, if I give my personal number to every patient and ask them to call for every small thing, I think they are really going to, I'll probably have to have 4 assistants to just attend the phone calls. That it's not that easy to do. Though would love to do it if we had the capacity and time to do it, but we don't. So we use WhatsApp. The problem with WhatsApp is also that there is a level of intimacy, you can say, a level of connection which you don't really want. So you don't want patients bothering you with certain questions which can be asked at odd points of time. Today is Sunday, and if I'm going to open my WhatsApp, I'm going to have about 50 or 60 unread messages from my patients asking all kinds of queries. The problem is sometimes, now patients have learned that, you can also make a WhatsApp call. So now they have the WhatsApp number, that you can use it like a normal phone call, and they can do a WhatsApp call, if they're really, if their query is not answered for a few hours. So I think, this is where, and this is something, the problem is running a WhatsApp clinic like we all do. It's often a breach of our own privacy, and the data, unfortunately, is not permanent and is not safely stored, in the sense that, of course, WhatsApp does use encryption. But let's say I change my mobile phone. Remember, WhatsApp does back up all the data. But any point of time, most of you would have experienced that. You change your phone, you try to download the data again from the server where it was uploaded. You always have some data which is lost. So when I'm looking back at the data, and this has happened to me quite a few times, when I'm looking back at the data to publish some study, or to do some research or do some internal research also, very difficult, because sometimes you have some of the data which is actually lost. So this is a problem, and this is where a simple thing so this is a typical workflow for me. The patients inform me the fasting sugar, and I adjust the dose of insulin. This is where 7sugar really helps me. So 7sugar has an inbuilt chat platform which works almost like WhatsApp. In fact, better than WhatsApp, I would say, where the patients can inform their sugar values, and at the same time they can store their values, their SMBG values, in the app itself. So you can, of course, and this has happened to me quite a few times. The patient sends a sugar value, saying that fasting sugar was 32. And every day the patient had sugar of 110, 120, and suddenly the patient has 32 sugar. So, often my brain starts, running, and I say, okay, is it 32 or is it 132? The patient would, type back saying, no, so I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It is 132, not 32, So sometimes you have these issues come up, in that sense, you are also medically, legally bound, because, 32 is hypoglycemia, and I tell them, you take dextrose and so on and so forth, take glucose, the next sugar will be 300. You don't want that. So, if the patient stores the SMBG data in the 7sugar app, he can take a photograph of the glucometer, or he can just directly type it. And of course, if the patient informs you, the chances of error are also less. And plus, the data which is stored is more permanent, and you can again look back to it and analyze it at a later point of time when you want to feel like. So just to summarize what I wanted to talk about, the first message I'd like to give is that 7sugar gives you, and I said I promised you I'm going to use this word very often, it gives you an enhanced CGM experience. And I think, maybe that, kidnapper in the breathe thing probably was using 7sugar app. That's why you could manage a type 1 patient without having much of medical knowledge, very easily. Second is, it's a boon for managing type 1 patients. It irons out various issues. It can help calculate the insulin carb ratio, and maybe fine tune the diabetes management in a much more effective way. Especially in children, because children eat all kinds of food. You don't really know what they're eating, when they're eating, how they're eating. They're grazing all the time. My younger daughter, would be, I'm just open the door and she'll be grazing something, from the fridge, in any given point of time she likes. Third is, it reduces the dependence on WhatsApp as a means of patient communication. You can use the app itself for a means of patient communication without breaching your own privacy, without giving out your own personal number, without, and trying to, and this is one of the key aspects of productivity. They say that if you want to be more productive, you need to keep your personal life and personal workspace separate from your private life and your private workspace. And unfortunately, the problem with WhatsApp is that, the WhatsApp messages from Abhijit or Mohan and Dr. Shaktivel is going to be in the same platform as the WhatsApp message which comes from the patient, and I cannot really differentiate a private and public life. Of course, I can have a separate number for patients, but sometimes you tend to have this sort of a mingling of private and personal lives, which 7sugar helps you, because that app is kept separate. All your diabetes related work can be done there, and your private life can be kept to WhatsApp. So Of course, it has a lot of other features. And like I told you, this is how I use the app. Your use of the app may be very different, and Abhijit will go and do a deep dive into some of the other features which the platform provides. I think it's a complete one-stop shop. You know, you have an inbuilt teleconsultation, video chat system. It has an inbuilt EMR. It has a ability to outsource your dietitian's work, or the work of a nutritionist, or a fitness trainer. Also, all these things you can outsource it to 7sugar, and they'll help you out in the process. So those who are, you know, starting a new clinic where they don't have a dietitian, or don't have a fitness person, or don't have a don't, you know, I'd say not have a receptionist for taking appointments, everything can be then worked in 7sugar app, right? So I think these are the other features, and I think this Abhijit will go into more detail. So I thank you for a patient listening, and I hope, you know, this platform becomes as useful to you as it has been for me.
Thank you, Dr. Rom. Questions and other queries, I think we'll get in after we finish the second session. So without wasting any more time on this precious Sunday, I'll dive into my slides. Hello? Yes. Is my screen visible?
Yes, yes. We want to go into present mode, doctor.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Taking off from an amazing presentation, what Om has introduced to us, I just want to go into finer details of how we differentiate the management of diabetes as well as other endocrine disorders. So that is what I'll be covering in today's talk. And so we'll start off with the introduction, and I'll dive into a few cases, and what the impact of this platform can do to our practice is what I'll be concluding with. When we talk of healthcare platforms, all of you have used healthcare platforms, so there is nothing more that I can add to it, but I want to differentiate what we are doing differently at 7sugar. All healthcare platforms have these three components. One component where there's a mobile application where we are collecting the data. The second part of the data is the analytics platform. Now, this is where we differentiate ourselves. The analysis of the data for somebody who has a very specific type of practice needs to be done in a certain way. And that is where we come in. And if you have, like, for example, you want to see all your GDM cases with a fasting sugar of more than 95. So the platform, once the data comes in, so through the mobile application of the patient, we are collecting the vitals, labs, the lifestyle data, as Om mentioned. The sugar data can come in from either from CGMs or as well as SMBGs. And in the future, we're going to directly integrate these connected devices onto the mobile phone. So there's no further input that needs to be done. We're looking at probably 3 points of data of work that the patient will be doing. And with this data, we get a huge amount of information which we can clinically use to make sense. And as I said, if you're looking at a GDM patient, if you're getting all this messages that are on your WhatsApp, my sugar is this much, my sugar is this much, there is a history behind the patient and what medication they're taking, and I have to correlate all these three things. So my next message, when they tell me my sugar is this much, and if they've not messaged me in the past, I would probably ask them, what is your prescription? Then the conversation goes on and on like that. Here, when we are analyzing, you will get a dashboard with exactly what information you need to see. If you want to see people who have not complied to their diet data, you'll get a list with all those people, and then you can dive right into that. I will be showing you how we are going to be using this data. Either it is for research or for patient management in the next slides. So that is the data aspect of it. With this learning of all the things that you collected of the patient, the main aspect of what we are trying to do is report it. It has to make sense to you. If you're talking about various other applications, like for example, you're talking a dietary application. Either the person has joined a diet program on that diet application, and whatever happens on that diet application doesn't make any clinical sense when they come to you to meet you. They'll tell you, I've joined this app, I've done this kind of a program. For me to make clinical sense out of it, there is absolutely no connection. Some of them says, so I'm doing great physical activity. I'm using this Fitbit. All the data comes in over there. This is my analytics. But I want to make the correlations of everything together. And that is where the insights and the advisories that come in once we collect all this report, which we can use to make our treatment plans. So I'll be showcasing this exact point. So with this knowledge of all the data that you have, you're treating various aspects of your practice, and that is what we bring to the table. So let's start with an important point about all a nation of carb lovers. And if we don't understand your patient, you definitely cannot address their issues and definitely solve the problem. If you are trying to achieve that that golden A1C goal, it's going to be very hard if you don't know what is going on. So we looked at 35,000 meals that we have analyzed. In this 35,000 meals, 55% of them were above budget, and 60% of them did not have fiber. The concept of fiber also is absolutely lacking in most of our patients. When we looked at all the meals together, we started to see the amount of the direct correlation between meal time variability. So if you change your meal timing even by 40 minutes, we were seeing large changes with the glucose variability that were there on the remaining part of the day. So these were changes that we were seeing. So let's get into the first case. I have chosen elderly population because, again, when we start talking about applications and people in the platform, I want to showcase exactly how this happens. There are a good group of elderly population who do not have the ease of use of the application, but we only train them to use the chat feature most likely, because the remaining other aspects about the patient data is input by a backend or the doctor themselves. So we just teach them how to use the chat because they've been doing the chat feature through WhatsApp. So we're just shifting from one application to another application. Good number of patients who are above 60 are uploading food photographs. As I said, we have 35,000 of such photographs. And this particular lady, she had difficulty uploading photographs, so her son helped out. There is somebody in the house who has a smartphone and knows how to use a smartphone. All we are asking for is about 10 photographs of the patient for us to understand their eating patterns. So when we were looking at this person's profile, 76-year-old diabetic, 10 years, A1C 10, not in control, never been in control, diabetic with diabetic kidney disease with a stable creat of 2. Now, with such kind of numbers, how can I solve this problem? I'm making the assumptions without understanding what this person is going through. So let's look at what we are seeing. So when we saw the early part of the day, we completely missed the exposures that were happening on the second half of the day. Even after this, we still are not able to understand what's going on about the patient. So once they send the food photographs, you can see right here, she is unwilling to come down on the carb load. This is her typical lunch, which consists of rice, more rice, and even more rice. So there are 3 different varieties of rice. And at night, she has what is left over for breakfast, what is left over for lunch, and what they have cooked for dinner. She doesn't like to let go of what food is there. She doesn't like wasting food. Every day food is cooked fresh. So that is her typical dinner. So this kind of understanding, so you're looking at large, and this is seen not just in one, we have seen in multiple, as I said, more than 50% of them, but this level of carb loads are achieved uniquely in some group of population. If I don't understand her eating patterns, how am I going to address the issue? If she is only on, if she's on OADs and with a worsening kidney function, it becomes extremely difficult. So that is where we are looking at our interactive reports. So when we talk to these people, when we talk to them, uh, we are beginning to understand the whole aspect of what is going on. So when we look at the report, I can exactly, as Om mentioned, I can exactly interact with the report and explain to them, this is what you've been eating, and this is what this is the kind of sugars that you're going to achieve. Large peaks, wherever they have uploaded the data, and I can show them their meals along with what they have done. The meals are again broken up into different components of uh, micro and macronutrients, and by explaining exactly this concept, they begin to understand much better. After talking to them about such kind of eating patterns, then they begin to understand. So it's a work in progress. And to make this analysis, I have done this in exactly 5 minutes in front of you. For me to sit and correlate all these points of data, it would probably take me around 45 minutes. In exactly 30 seconds, I have seen the eating pattern, I've seen the kind of glucose exposures, I've seen the patterns, and we have taken it from there. And when we talk about simple photographs, all we are asking them is to take food photographs and keep their phone with them when they go walking. If they don't have a smart, like a fitness band or anything, the phone captures the steps. So that these are two homeworks that we give them. And the third homework is probably upload your SMBG data. So these are 3 points of data we are asking. And with that 3 points of data, we can do a lot more. So majority of the patients that we have seen, these are hidden things. How many biscuits, I eat a healthy snack. So this is what is considered healthy for most of them. A refined carb and this is like taken fasting from 90 to about 180 to 200. And then from there, they're having a very nice and good breakfast. So if you don't understand these small factors that are happening on a day-to-day life of the patient, it becomes hard for us to manage diabetes on the overall whole and to achieve our standard of care. When you look, so to achieve the exact targets, it makes it very hard. A lot of you will argue that CGM is definitely out of reach for majority of your patients. I definitely agree with you. And we are still dealing with diabetes from just 3 points of information: fasting, PP, and their A1C if it is there. Even with that, we still have no idea. The majority of them just come with a single report of random blood sugars. We don't have a history of what has happened through the day. We don't have a kind of overall, and we make educated guesstimates. We may not be wrong, but we are making these guesstimates. But what if in that 10 to 15%, not everyone will have that vast clinical experience to manage all the patients. So what if that 10 to 15% you are wrong? Why do we need to make that risk? So when you have technology to solve these problems, let's use technology to make it smarter. So yes, CGM does solve a lot of problems like glycemic variability. You exactly know where the pain points are, but not all of them are going to afford a CGM. So now what do I have? What are my other alternatives? So that is where the monitoring program, the 7sugar GMP report comes into play. So let's look at the second case. This is again an elderly lady who above 70 years, and so what you are seeing here is the consolidated average of their SMBG data. So from a patient standpoint, they just have to input their SMBG values at different times of the day. If they're taking, I encourage them to take their meal photograph when they're taking their before after SMBG values. We get an average of the overall consolidated data. This is data for about a month that we are looking here. And so you know the averages of fasting PP and the time and target, again, we are looking at. So when we visualize the same data, that is where the concept of it, we break it down again into highs, lows, and the median. And we kind of look at what is happening overall over here. So
just a second, Abhijit, the screen is blank. I'm not sure if everybody is able to see the screen. The slide is blank. What I'm saying, the slide is blank.
I think we're not able to see the GMP data.
One second, yes. Let me just go back.
I think you need to share the
reshare the screen. One second.
Yes.
The interactive report also was not seen, right?
The first case was seen, but not the second case.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, we're able to see your screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the second case. Again, a lady above 70 years of age, inputting her SMBG value on a daily basis and also taking meal photographs to get a correlation of what is happening. So I encourage them to do this, and we are visualizing the same data. So I kind of have a fair idea of what is happening, what the average fastings are, and post-prandial, what the median is for this person throughout the whole day. So this is the summary chart. We can also break it down from a week wise. If I'm looking for a GDM case, again, the same data, I can break it down per week. And then again, we are looking, I can further go, if one of the weeks we are seeing a variation, I can further go into further details about what is happening on typical days of this patient. In the day view, what you are seeing here, you can see some fastings are on a higher level, and then when they have submitted their food photographs, that is also comes into the report. So I get a fair understanding what the fasting and the postprandial, along with what the meal that they have eaten, and kind of get an overall look of this person from a week standpoint, as a day standpoint, and very collectively. So I can even look at it from an individual standpoint in the app itself, and the reporting comes in once I created a 7sugar bridge, which generates these analytic reports. Let me get back to the presentation. Yes. So why the whole concept of the 7sugar report was designed after looking at 3,500 patients, and what you are seeing in the bottom over here is a collective AGP of 650 patients who had submitted their food and fitness data. What we learned from these patients are exactly the variations are happening, not just from one single standpoint, it is happening throughout the day. And there was a 40% increase of hyperglycemic state on the second half of the day. If they're not willing for CGM, definitely encourage them to look at it from a whole the whole day, 24-hour period standpoint. And that is where, when we combine everything together, we make all the difference. My final case is a pre-diabetic lady who has a BMI of 30 and a A1C of 6.3. In the past, it used to be follow a diabetic diet, reduce your weight, and then we will evaluate you in 3 months' time. So that would be my generic kind of advice. Now, when I correlate and I see all the eating patterns, taking high glycemic foods, even though the carb load may not be high, but again, not having that carb to fiber ratio, having less physical activity. So here everything is summarized into one single view. I know exactly, if I'm going to tell this person to lose weight, in about 2 weeks of information, or even a week, I can judge their eating patterns. I can judge all the even though you look at the most of the foods that this person has been eating are all high GI foods with absolutely no fiber. So when you teach them, when you talk about them, about their diet with their own plates, they begin to understand and listen and also adopt much better when you talk to them in their own language. Eating patterns of this person is quite high at night, with around 600 calories being consumed, and with absolutely minimum physical activity. So making these correlations, we are able to diabetes care as well as treat other lifestyle issues easily by just looking at it overall. So what happens to all this data? We can exactly put these points and correlate them to give you ideas of where the problem happens. You can choose a cohort of any of your patients, tell us which are the values that you need to be, what all parameters you need to evaluate. You'll find the correlations, and then you can again deep dive into those patients. So here you're looking at a heat map of the people who went through our CGM program, where we looked at the glucose variability, we looked at meals, we looked at broke down meals into each component, and then started to look for correlations. What we learned from this exercise was 40 minutes change of meal timing by 40 minutes led to around 45% more variability on the second half of the day when they had that meal variation. We also learned a minimum physical activity of what we call an intense physical activity, where we started to see a more stable profile, was around close to around 1,700 steps, which are done in a time period of 1 hour. It's not much. That 1,700 can be easily achieved by majority of our patients, but they need to achieve that. So that is the learnings. By looking at data collectively, we are able to see different kind of things. Now we are visualizing the patterns in glucose management, and that is where all of it starts to come together. We are also creating different dashboards. This is manage our patients. How many of my performing 3 months back? Again, we don't have such kind of active dashboards for us to manage our patients. How many of my patients have poor A1C control? How many of my patients are diabetic, who have diabetic nephropathy and not done the right kind of evaluation? So this kind of information, all of it you are empowered to manage your patients much better by looking at the data that we are collecting. It is extremely simple. The kind of the link that we have made, it is private. Your data is your own. Patient data, actually patient owns the data, but the data that you have collected is between you and the patient. That is the kind of relationship that we are trying to create with a platform like this. There is no external influence that happens on a platform like this. And that is where we are empowering the doctor to do more and to take diabetes to another level. And definitely it will help us put out more research and definitely achieve our targets. What end of the day, A1C is still the gold standard, so we still have to adhere to that. Here we are able to do this collectively. Here I've just showcased what diabetes, what we can do for diabetes. We can do the same for any other chronic disease, and that's how we've been looking at it all and managing patients as of now. Thank you so much for making time today, and the house is now open for questions.
So I'll just, clarify. There are certain questions which were there in the chat box sent over and others. So 7sugar is, a platform which is both app-based as well as web-based. So mainly you have the 7sugar app. There are two components of the app. You have the caregivers component, which is used by doctors, and the other component is the patient end, which you can onboard a patient. So let's say a patient walks into my clinic, and I want the patient to use the 7sugar app. I can use my caregiver application to send an invite to the patient. The patient can then download the app at his or her mobile phone. give up the preliminary data, the height, weight, age, name, etc. And then the patient gets onboarded, and that all the data which the patient then uploads gets sent to your caregiver application. You also have a web-based system which is there, so you can access the same using using a computer. So some people may not be very comfortable typing out things on their mobile phones, so they can use the web version of the app to get all the things. Again, to get the CGM data, you need to they need to install a bridge for you. That it's not very difficult process. It's a 5-10 minute job. So that once that bridge is installed onto your system, as soon as you connect your CGM device, you can upload that data directly to the 7sugar patient, to the specific patient, and that within minutes you will have the entire report being generated and available to you right at your desktop, and you can then print it out and give it to the patient. And the same would be available in the patient's app also. So you have both the things available there. Abhijit, there was a question about, can you integrate the existing EHR data with the app? Is it possible, or can we do it as a customization for specific
Yes.
doctors?
If you have a large amount of data, then definitely we can integrate that into the system. As of now, we can definitely discuss those custom requirements on what your needs will be. So definitely we can do that. And but right now there is no direct import feature what is there onto the platform where we are shifting from one EHR to another EHR. But this can be done, definitely done once we know your custom requirements and how your data is stored. It can easily be put. So yes, Om, please go ahead.
Yes, and there's a question about how is it monetized? How do you monetize this? How do patients make the payment, and so on? So can you talk a little bit about
Yes
the monetization aspect of the app?
Yes. So the main aspects in which we are charging the patient. Now we are talking from a doctor standpoint. I'm not from the platform. I'll separate this answer into two aspects. One is the platform charges, and one is the doctor charges. The platform, if you're, for example, we're doing a program of meal analysis for a month. So what it includes is, once the patient is submitting the photograph, these meals are, again, as Om and I have shown those reports. So these analysis, to make these meal separate, like in-depth meal analysis, we charge around 650 rupees per month. And from what we are saying is, you have to create a package, that each doctor creates their own package. Like for a CGM program for 14 days, you will be charging X amount of money. So in that whole process, we are, so somehow you can, this is the basic charge that you will be, which goes, the charge from the platform goes directly to the patient. So whatever you have already been running in your practice, if it is a CGM program, now you can add this other additional features of app costs, which you can add on to your existing costs, and that is where again the monetization happens for CGM. Now, when it comes to chat, also we have a chat meter also. So for every 10 chats, the patient is given a charge of 250. This again goes to the doctor. Each so they can set it. I want to give for a month time. I want to give X amount of chats. Then again, this can be monetized again. So the earning comes in from there. We are creating a glucose monitoring program where, from 7sugar side, our job is only to analyze the patient meal. The remaining aspects, what you get to tell your patients is, they get this application. What you're seeing right now is a demo patient over here. This is how from the patient side it looks. So you are giving them this application, and all their job is to upload the SMBG values, which is done through by clicking the plus button, and they will upload their SMBG values. As Om already mentioned, either a photograph of the glucometer can be taken or directly typed into the system. So this is how we are looking at this is a simple way in which they will be interacting with the application. So for a month, once all this data is captured. So this is one capture is the SMBG, next capture is the meal. So it's a matter of just taking a food photograph, like by clicking the plus button over here, describing what the meal is. They can talk about what they've eaten, what type of meal they're consuming right now, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then click submit. So that's all they need to do to upload a meal. And from the backend, we analyze the meal. So again, we are the charges of 7sugar platform can be discussed later. But from a doctor standpoint, they can you are giving the patient this ability to for a month you are looking at them. So we give you a concise report from a weekly standpoint, from a monthly. So the diet reports comes as a weekly report. The SMBG values, what I've shown you in the patient, comes as a weekly report. So week, month. So they get all of this analyzed, and they have an interactive session. So you can have your own care team. All as you can see here, this the test patient is linked to me, and there's a diet team. You can include other people also into this aspect. So you can tell the patient you have all these aspects, and you can monetize it as per what you see fit. We are charging as in the 7sugar center, we charge around 1,500 for this kind of monitoring program for the patient. Right now, it used to happen only on WhatsApp. When we say why this is better than WhatsApp, if I'm looking at it from a doctor standpoint, the messaging, why messaging? First of all, the messaging is metered. The second part of so these are a couple of patients that I have here. So if I look into actual data of the patients who have uploaded information, so when I'm chatting with them directly, I can look exactly when we are chatting, the values are there. I can go into further details of what is happening about the patient. So I have all the aspects, the prescription generation, if there is dietary, what the meals that they've eaten. So the chat becomes a little bit more structured. And the next part of it is the reporting. So this particular patient has only given me one reading here. So I have an overall view of this patient. If there is something off, I can directly go into a call. If I want to look at this person's history, I have all the information right here in the chat page itself. So I know what the prescription this person is doing. I know the eating pattern. I know the SMBG values if they have uploaded it. So all of it, you can charge by creating packages. So that's what we encourage to do for your patients. You have to create packages. It could be a weight loss package, which is only looking at dietary intervention, and then they will get 3 or 4 reports. Again, this is customized to how your practice works. And so once we are able to collect all this information about the patient, we are able to look at it from a overall standpoint. Just to talk about a bit of COVID, I know a lot of you don't are fed up about it, but the app can also monitor your patient's vitals. If somebody is a COVID positive patient sitting at home, you need to look at these important aspects. So the test patient, I'm going to enter a very high value of the BP as well as temperature. So all I have to do is I've entered these 2 abnormal values, and this is somebody who we are monitoring live at home. So the values have been uploaded. All I have to do from a caregiver standpoint, I go to my home page. I get all the alerts which are which are out of range. It can be an SMBG alert, it could be a fitness activity, it could be a meal which is above a certain range. So all your alerts can be designed exactly to what you want to look at a patient. As I had mentioned here, I just now the patient has uploaded an abnormal value, the demo patient, and all the information is from the vital standpoint, all of it is right here. I can chart this value and look at it from a longitudinal standpoint. So this information is all in your hands, and the key to looking at data is what we are trying to do, and making sense and empowering the doctor. That is what we want to do. We want you to be empowered, and it is simple inputs like I have done in front of you within those few seconds. We are, and patient behavior. If it is an elderly population, definitely there is somebody in the house to help them make these inputs and interact with the app. So that is how we have designed this whole process, and it is we can discuss further if there are further doubts there with more detail, and probably do a demo, personal demo, if people are interested.
So can I add just one comment, Dr. Abhijit here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so with regards to monetization, we have broadly two plans. One is, we can, if you have a bulk patients, right? If you have a large number of patients, we can provide what is called as like a SaaS offering, which is like a one-time fee, and then all the services will be available, and you can advise your patients to whichever service is more appropriate. The other option is to where we charge as on a per patient basis, depending upon what services that particular patient needs. Whether it is a diet consultation, meal analysis, if it needs any, let's say any type of fitness plan that is required, any additional consultations. So that can be customized again. So broadly, we have two plans. Either you can do it as on a per patient basis, or as a bulk, where you have a suite of services, and you can pick and choose what you want to assign to different patients. Like chat is one example that Dr. Abhijit mentioned, meal analysis, diet consultation, plus usage of the app for video calling. So all of these are available. You can, we can package that depending upon the needs of your center.
So basically, Adi, what you're saying is that doctors who want to be using this, they can customize this entire process depending on their requirement and depending on their practice, right? Is that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And can they have their own branding also incorporated? For example, let's say you have a clinic, or you work for a hospital, and you would like to have the hospital's logo being shown, the hospital's branding being shown. Can that be done? Especially with the reports and all, because today is the world of branding. You would like to have your name on the report available. So.
Yes, very much, Dr. Om. In fact, we have designed the screens for including branding for the doctors. We are working on that, creating the screen, making that part of the app, where when you open up the app, the first screen that shows up is the doctor branding. You're connected with Dr. Om Lakhani, and then if you have a logo, the logo shows up. You will get the timings, date, when is the next appointment. So you'll have that. And then whatever logo you choose, we can have that logo flow into different parts of the reports. It can be on your meal reports, it can be in your prescription, it can be in your CGM reports. So the logo will flow into all of these reports. So the look and feel will be like, I'm using my doctor's app. That's the idea there. And so we are working on it. And in fact, if you will probably start off with your branding for you and see how it works out, and then once it's working, we'll probably scale it to everyone. Yes, definitely.
So Abhijit, we have Dr. Karthik with us, who is, as you all know, very interested in research, and in our meetings, he's been helping the 7sugar team with the potential use of 7sugar as a research platform. So Karthik, can you elaborate on how, the data which we get from 7sugar, for our own patients, how can we use that as a potential tool for a good clinical study or a research potential?
Yeah, thank you, Adi, and thank you, Om. Abhi, that was a wonderful presentation. So we all know that data is gold these days, and to be honest, we are all bleeding data from our respective organizations, whether it's a small clinic or a big hospital. Now, the challenge for us is to get data and the data in the right format for analysis. So how 7sugar helps is that we get clean data for analysis, because whenever, let's be frank about this, whenever we analyze data, 80% of the time, this is a global phenomenon, 80% of the time it's spent in cleaning the data and getting the data into the right format that the computer can process. So that is one way where 7sugar can basically help. Secondly, because it's a robust platform and it is a very secure platform, it is easier for the institutional review boards to clear any sort of program that you envisage to be cleared by the institutional review board becomes easier, because there is no data security issues here. And that is one more advantage of the 7sugar platform. So as we currently think, we are in the process of designing some study on this, especially in GDM patients and type 1 diabetes patients. So we'll sooner or later get ARB clearance and get things going. And obviously, anybody who is interested in this can, it's quite easy to onboard your patient. First time, like any other technology, what I believe is that your hands-on experience with it matters a lot, and that basically feeds forward into your perception of how things look like. For somebody who has never used a CGMS, it might look quite daunting if he is doing it for the first time. Anything, like if you have never touched a cycle, riding a cycle might look like a very difficult thing, but after a while it becomes second nature to you. In the same way, looking at data, extracting insights from the data, all of this is part of our learning process. And I think the huge advantage in my, I mean, as a person, of course, Abhijit and Om alluded to this. As a doctor, the huge advantage is it drastically cuts down the time you need to extract insights from a patient's CGMS or AGP report. Otherwise, it becomes a, we are all busy. We can't obviously spend 30 minutes per patient for every single patient. And this will get all of that information in a condensed, easy to digest format, which probably helps patients in a better manner. So from the clinical endpoint, as well as from the research standpoint, where the data is in a easy to digest format, easy to analyze format in a secure manner, and all you need to export the data is just a click, and it should be of much use for somebody who is interested in research as
So thank you, Dr. Karthik. I would like Dr. Shaktivel to talk a little bit more about how he is handling obesity and how a platform like this can help treat patients, especially looking at obesity and the PCO cases, and from that standpoint, sir.
Thanks, Abhijit. Good morning to one and all. I've been following up 7sugar for some time now, and to get the entire picture of 7sugar is, as Abhijit and Om had pointed out so lucidly, it's a very interesting platform from the endocrine perspective. But again, as we know, different endocrinologists position themselves in different specialties, some into pediatrics, some into diabetes, some into hardcore endocrinology. I position myself more into obesity, thyroid, and PCOS. So from that perspective, when I looked into 7sugar, I saw a lot of potential there, because we are not only getting here about the diet inputs, but also about physical activity, compliance. And I'm looking into 2-3 aspects where we can add on to this is add some tips on habit formation, about productivity, time management. If these are some small tips which you can put it here and there, and that becomes more a wow factor for the person. The other thing is that in weight reduction as such, the most important part that we come across is the diet. After all the things which we have looked into, it is not exercise that is the most common thing, but it is the diet pattern. And as Abhijit has pointed out, our diet is mostly carbohydrate based, and if you are able to show them with their own pictures that where they are going wrong, then the message goes in well. So from the obesity perspective, for people who are even non-diabetic, I find that especially for PCOS and thyroid people who are overweight, this aspect of able to journal these things and then come back to them, and you're able to find the chart along with a little bit of productivity tips and habit formation will be useful. The second thing was I was looking into, I right now for my diabetes practice, I am outsourcing it to diabetic educators. One of them is in South, the other is in Chennai, the other is in another place. So I have diabetic educators who are helping me online for my patients with type 1 diabetes as well as type 2 diabetes. As Abhijit said, he has a team of nutritionists. We can probably also look into an aspect of a team of diabetic educators, because many endocrinologists do not have the access to a diabetes educator. So that would also be really helpful because they would come into the platform, because once they come into the platform, those parts are taken care of. Like diet is taken care of, diabetes education is taken care of, plus you are getting these inputs. So it adds on to what is already there. So thanks again, Abhijit.
Thank you, Dr. Shaktivel. And Dr. Mohan Shenoy also is here amongst our panelists here today. So Dr. Mohan, what do you feel about integrating and being networked? Because I think you are one of the most well-networked endocrinologists in India. And so how do you feel having this kind of integration of data and being connected? You can speak to your patient anywhere. So how much does it add value to your practice, or do you still feel India is still struggling to convert itself into completely digital? Like it couldn't be online, offline kind of that's what we are living in that era now. It will be definitely follow-ups will, most of it, if we have an option of follow-up to be online, we are going to take up that option. So how do you see this kind of like being in touch with the patient and networking with the patients and having teams all over the country? So how do you feel that concept of it?
Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you for the opportunity. So this is basically an all-in-one app. So it has got integrated with all the stuff, because we have video features there, and we have got a team inside that app itself. And moreover, the patient feels that whenever the patient travels, we are also with them always. So that is a feel of confidence to the patient we can give them. So I have been using for the last 2 months, and it's a beta format initially. Now we have got the near final version, and it is helping me because PCO patients and a few patients who were really reluctant for lifestyle monitoring and counting their steps and all, so they are able to communicate better with me now. So that way, patients are feeling that a lack of the communication feeling, that is not there now. Moreover, as you told, private time, we are able to focus more because WhatsApp chats are basically reduced to only the essential things. And moreover, we have to be more self-dependent because even the institutions where we work, they may have their own platforms. So in our private practice, I think we should have one independent platform which we can use for endocrinology perspective. So that way, social media, I think we can campaign for endocrine awareness in that sense. But moreover, as a commercial aspect, this way is definitely helpful as an add-on feature for us. So I think this is one of the ways in which the identity of our endocrinology also will be more in the boom.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan.
To add to what Mohan has said, a few days back, I and Om had a debate on whether education works or technology works. So I sort of missed an important point in that thing. The thing is that for education to work, it has to be a near continuous process of low intensity contact with the healthcare team. It's not a one-off thing because we are anyway doing that one-off thing in the hospitals. So as Mohan rightly said, this app is not merely a doctor, but also a nutritionist. And as Dr. Sakti pointed out, it has some potential for adding in some notifications for behavioral modification and so on and so forth. It's like having an entire healthcare team in your pocket. So way back when iPod was introduced, Steve Jobs told it was 1,000 songs in your pocket. This is like having an entire diabetes team in your pocket, and that basically adds a huge amount of value to the patient in terms of blood sugar control, as well as gives both the doctor and the patient a kind of peace of mind, and that is priceless, I think.
So I think Karthik, you agree with the use of technology then. Okay, so I think
Yeah,
Abhijit.
judicious use of technology.
So Abhijit, I think when we had a initial primary discussion on this, there was a lot of talk about, and I would like the input of Karthik also on this. We envisioned, and I think this was one of your key points, that it's very useful in patients with gestational diabetes, GDM patients. So can you elaborate how this app could be useful in your GDM patients? Because that's a group of patient which we all all of us see quite often, and they're often on multi-dose insulin, and they have specific dietary issues. So how does the app really help a typical GDM patient, or especially a GDM patient on insulin?
The one most important aspect now is the kind of visits that the person, the expecting mother needs to do doesn't need to happen at the clinic. So every aspect of the monitoring is captured on the application. When it comes to even the scans also, they upload the scan reports to see the growth scan. When it comes to the SMBG data, that is also there. And the third part of the food aspect. Lot of expecting mothers have specific requirements of their particular diet. Is that diet influencing their spike, 1 hour glucose spike? So that is where once we are seeing these kind of photographs and we are seeing these changes, we are directly messaging and communicating to these expecting mothers. So the information received is real time. The messages that we are getting, as I said, I have set up my my alerts in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, all my people on the GDM program, there's a specific notifications that I get for these group of people. So I've grouped each of my cases according to diagnosis. The type 1, there's a separate program. So the application allows me to specifically monitor certain aspects, and I know these group of patients are subgrouped in my patient profile. So I know which mothers need to be assessed. Have they gone out of their diet? And all this comes in separate notifications. So I immediately, when the diabetic educator team, they see these lists of people. So I don't need to go and message each of these things. So then the morning, the team just sends these messages. You ate this, make this small change, then you'll definitely see improvement. So that kind of immediate feedback is happening. The cases have been grouped according to who needs attention. If everything is going well, I don't get an alert. They don't pop up in my list of patients who I need to evaluate. And so that is how that's how easy it works, and that's how we are taking the challenge. And the biggest thing, as I said, they don't need to come and see me every time. So we have set it up in certain ways where we have a 15-day interaction. It's over the phone, and whenever they're coming to see the gynecologist, if there is something further to discuss face to face, it happens in the hospital. Otherwise, all the interactions are happening through video calls on the app or through chat. And
Karthik, how do you? Yeah. Karthik, can you add something here? I mean, how do you see this for GDM patients? Because yes, I think Abhijit covered a lot of interesting areas, I think, and not ability to for the patient not to visit, especially in the COVID era. that's a problem again. That's again a entrepreneurial problem which is being solved here. So anything else you think that it will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
in or diabetes
So
in pregnancy per
even
se?
outside of the COVID pandemic, Rag, I feel that a patient might need more consultations with a dietitian for sort of you know changing the diet, adding some tips here and there. For those kind of I call them as mini consultations. So those kind of mini consultations are not possible in the traditional setup for two important things. One, if you are a small practitioner in a remote place, you may not have access to high quality nutritionists. If you are a big practitioner in a corporate hospital, you may not be able to influence the hiring practices of the corporate, or the patient may not be able to work with the nutritionist in a closed manner. So these both problems, access to a high quality nutritionist and frequency of access, both of these are solved by the 7sugar platform, in my opinion. So for example, if a patient has to come to a hospital only to meet a dietitian but not an endocrinologist, that kind of visit is very less likely to happen in our setting. One, because the patient does not necessarily feel like, many of our patients, I mean, this experience would vary across the country, I think, and many of our patients may not think like they should visit a hospital to just visit a dietitian, whereas they tend to club all things together: a dietitian plus a gynecologist plus an endocrinologist and so on. So if we want to have continuous education and continuous adjustment of their diet, which should result in a better outcome, then this is the app to have. And you don't even need access to high quality dietitian in your setup. Even in that situation also, 7sugar app would be very helpful. For example, if you are sitting in, say, for example, say a tier 2 city, Shakti sir also pointed out recently, some of his HR talent comes from Chennai or down south in Tamil Nadu or some other place. We are, that's a very important thing, I think, in my opinion. That will help the patients in a long way. To access and frequency, these two are things which are definitely improved by 7sugar.
Very interesting perspective. Abhijit, can we take questions from the audience?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So if anybody has a question, you can please unmute yourself and you can ask any of us. And you can of course leave your questions in the chat. I think we covered quite a few questions from the chat as well.
So Abhijit, this is Dr. Shakti here.
Yes.
Let me start with the first question.
Yes,
Abhijit, is the app now ready for launch, or is it being actively used now?
right now we have a total of 2,000 patients on board onto the app, and so it is active and ready for everyone to onboard. And we will again create a very unique kind of a digital clinic. So the experience for the doctor is their own practice, and the app will link them with their own patients. The app will, there no discovery will happen on the application. So if you want to sign up, then we'll help you create that kind of a link between your patient and your practice. And so it's like a create your own personal digital clinic. So that's how we have thought of and designed this application. It is ready for everyone to use now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
So Abhijit, can we give the doctors who are interested, a hands-on sort of a demo which they can use for a few weeks, play around with it, see the features, and have a look at what even I think perhaps they can give a valuable feedback in terms of where things can be changed or things can be improved or things can be modified. So how do we go about that? How can we create a sort of a demo for doctors to use in their own practice, maybe from tomorrow itself, if possible, if they want.
So we will be sending out links directly to all the participants here today. You'll be getting a link to the caregiver app. So just download the app, fill up the questions that are there on the process, and then the account will be active in about 12 hours from when you onboard yourself. So just download the app and fill up the questionnaire. We will activate your account from the back end, and then you can start to use the application. We'll also put a few demo patients so you can get a feel of how the features will have. And I also suggest that you download the patient app, and once your doctor app is active, there will be a specific doctor code which will be there in the settings page. So link your patient app, download the patient app and link yourself with that specific code. So you will get an overall view of how the whole process works. And anything further, we can definitely do a one-on-one demo. The team will be ready to contact you and give you a one-on-one demo on how things work. And we are always here to assist you if there is some kind of if you need anything further from this process.
So Adi, will we be sending out emails to all the participants?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll send. And Dr. Om, I think it's interesting, if potentially, we could have a group demo as well, where there's one demo for all the participants in the webinar. And so that, if there are questions, and if one person has questions, the same question, other people may have, so that all the questions will get answered, to help everyone. So we could do that as well. We could do one-on-one as well as with the team, so that it can benefit everyone. Yes.
That's a great idea. So, yeah, any more questions from the audience? Yes, Shrikant.
So, Abhijit, yes, hi, Dr. Abhijit. And Om, very good presentation and very good app. So, once we are getting this demo link, and if we are onboarding onto it, we can use our real patients also, just to see how it works onto them.
Yes, you'll be getting the whole the actual application. It will not.
So we just need to ask our patient to download the 7sugar patient app, the basic app, and then they can add on to data onto it.
Yes, sir.
So there's one more way of doing it. So, once you have the caregiver app, there's an option to invite patients. You take the patient's number, you add an invite thing. So the patient gets a SMS directly on the mobile phone, in which you have the link to the patient for the patient to download, as well as the patient gets directly connected to you, using your link. So I think that makes the process very easy. So once you have a patient in front of you, you have an assistant there. You can ask the assistant to just take the patient's number, and you can, using your app, send an invite link, and then that the patient gets directly onboarded, and the patient doesn't have to search around for the app. Right? Am I right, Abhijit? Is that the way?
Correct. That is
the easier way to do it? Yeah.
Yes, that's an easier way.
Okay. Also, Abhijit, if we have like dietitians, we have, or if we have a junior doctor, then we can onboard them also. Like, we need not to monitor all these things myself. I think some things can be done by my juniors also, or by my dietitians also. So
exactly.
We need not to.
So we create care teams. So for example, you have a specific dietitians who are handling all your GDM cases or your obesity cases. You create a specific package which only links those dietitians with that patient. So once the patient is onboarded, you can also have a demo, like a default package also, where all your whole team is linked. And each of the patient who interacts, they can input notes, and those notes will come in the note section, which is each of their inputs once they speak to the patient. And then there's a direct, and the patient is exposed to all the people on the team. They can chat with them, whoever is
delegated
to that patient, or whoever is the role responsible for them. They can indirectly interact with the patient. And the data is distributed to all of them. So all of them have the access to what you will be seeing as a doctor.
I think that's another problem it solves, right, Shrikant? Because, for example, like, let's say I'm using the WhatsApp, my own WhatsApp number to communicate with the patient. But suppose, I'm let's say out of station for maybe a week. and I have a junior doctor or I have an assistant who works with me, uh, you know, for in WhatsApp, it's not possible for them to answer the queries which come to me, But I think using this 7sugar, I think, once they're part of the team, when I'm not available, somebody else can take over and can, answer the questions which are designated for for
Exactly,
me.
exactly.
So
Emergency hypoglycemia management, basal insulin titration, इतना छोटा काम तो वो लोग they
yeah,
can
they
definitely
can handle
do
it.
it if we have a junior doctor. Yeah.
Yes, and if you're, I mean, I'll make an appeal on behalf of Abhijit. If you're, the onboarding process has been, a lot of thought has gone into the onboarding process and the design part and all that. There's any difficulty or anything of any assistance at all, I think you can give your suggestions and feedback also. That should help refine the thing even better.
Great, good point, Dr. Karthik.
Dr. Tejal today, but Dr. Tejal helped a lot to design that onboarding process. It's very clear about what should be there and what should not be there in that, onboarding system. So I think, it would have been great if she was here today. She would have given, because she gave a lot of insights into how that onboarding process can be much easier compared to what it was originally, and then it was refined to make it much more simpler to so I think inputs from everybody who, as you use the app, if you find difficulties and if you find issues, I think we can have a follow-up session to this, maybe 2 or 3 weeks down the line, where once you are using the app, you can give some specific feedbacks and you can give your own insights into it, and then we can probably use that to make some changes and if necessary, and make the process more easier for everybody to use in their own practice. Can we do that, Abhijit? Can we have a
Yes,
follow-up?
definitely.
Yeah.
As we are open to anything that definitely we can have a follow-up meeting and do and take it further.
And again, one of the things that we have experienced on a day-to-day basis is that it moves from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. That data to wisdom pathway is sort of accelerated by the 7sugar app. It's like sort of having a turbo mode which takes you from raw data to useful insights about the patient in the shortest possible time. These days we have Uber and Ola apps which tell you if I have to go from T Nagar to Mandavali, which is the shortest path which can take me, after taking into account the traffic and things like that. No? This is, I believe, one of the shortest paths from raw data which is there in the CDMS or AGP to the useful insight which can actually result in positive changes for the patient.
Thank you, Dr. Karthik. So I think there are no more further questions. I thank each and every one of you. I personally thank all the panelists, Dr. Shaktivel, Dr. Om, Dr. Karthik, Dr. Mohan, for being here and making time. I thank every one of the participants for today, for spending your Sunday with us. And definitely we are here to help our patients and to further the research in diabetes and definitely move things forward in our country. Digital health is the way forward. And so I thank you all once again. I thank Adi for putting this together. Adi is the CEO of 7sugar, and I thank him for all the hard work he's doing, and definitely the 7sugar team. Without them, it is not possible to do something which is such a Herculean task, and they made it look really easy. And thank you all once again. Thank you, Om. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.